Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Jenny, and I will be facilitating today's event. Today, I'm joined by Holly and V from the Code Manager, Chris from Reco, and Jonathan from Gem. So just before we get started, we have a few housekeeping things that I want to cover. So we ask that you keep your videos and your microphones off. The event will be recorded, so if you miss anything, there will be an opportunity to refer back to the recording and the slides after the event. We'll also be using Slido, and I'll be sharing the QR code in the next slide. And there'll be opportunities for Q&A throughout. So if you have any questions, just type it into Slido. So this is the QR code, and I'll just leave that there for a moment. I'll also put the link in the chat shortly. And I will move on to the agenda. So we have a very packed agenda today, and I will hand off to Jonathan.
Hi, thanks for joining us. So I'm going to be talking about a couple of things this afternoon, but the section that I'll start with an overview of what this is all about, why we're doing levelisation policy, and just to be clear, the levelisation policy itself is about changes to the price cap, the prices that consumer pays. What RECO is implementing is the reconciliation mechanism that sits behind that levelisation policy to transfer costs between industry, but sort of give some overview for why we're doing any of this in the first place. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So I think we all know that energy has been in the news an awful lot. Cost of living crisis, particularly the energy crisis, the cost of energy, concerns around vulnerable customers, concerns around prepayment metering, drove a desire to correct what was perceived as an unfairness in the system. Traditionally, prepayment metering, particularly on the standing charge, has been much higher than for other payment types. Much of that driven by infrastructure and payment costs. So on the 23rd of February, we took the decision to levelise prepayment and direct debit standing charges. So in the price cap, in each region, the charges for the standing charge for prepayment are equalised via an allowance in the price cap. We've also announced that our current intention is to look at reducing some of the disparity between standard credit and direct debit debt relating costs, and that will have both a standing charge, small standing charge element, and a larger volumetric element. However, our position is that we are looking to do this, and we're going to be engaging in consultation with industry on the design of this over the future, over the coming year. Just to reiterate again, though, the piece that we're talking about today is just the standing charge element, the non-volumetric element, which goes live in a couple of weeks' time on the 1st of April. You can just move to the next slide, please. And just to show the sort of impacts that this has on customers. So we've got to be open about this. This transfers money between consumers. So it increases the price cap for the average direct debit consumer by around £10, and it reduces the price cap for the average prepayment customer by about £52. This now makes prepayment the cheapest payment method overall, which is a stark change from where we were previously. And in our publishing impact assessment, we've shown that this ultimately gives overall savings to consumers in the in the benefits of this of around £112 million. It also has positive impacts on the working capital and bad debt of 400,000 and 1.5 million, respectively. It will also have a small but positive impact on the in the number of people who are self-disconnecting. By positive, I mean a reduction in the number of people self-disconnecting. So that's a very quick overview of why we're doing all of this stuff, and we need this changes the amount that suppliers can charge and the revenue that they bring in, but obviously there needs to be some sort of reconciliation mechanism that sits behind that to make sure that your actual revenue isn't positively or negatively impacted by this, which is what R0147 and the whole levelisation reconciliation mechanism is about. So that's, as I say, very, very quick run through of the context for this. Happy to take any questions, or we can move on to the next piece.
Thank you. So over to me. Hi everybody, thanks for joining. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the payment method levelisation reconciliation pre-release information and some of the readiness activities. Jenny, if you could go on to the next slide for me. Thank you. So the change proposal R0147 Prepayment Levelisation seeks to introduce the necessary governance and the charging arrangements into the Retail Energy Code. And that's to reconcile the impact on domestic suppliers of levelling that cost of the standing charges to domestic consumers paying by prepayment meter with those paying by direct debit. So there are going to be a number of REC products impacted by this change, and they'll be introduced as part of an extraordinary release on the 28th of March. So we are introducing a new schedule, Schedule 31, which is Payment Method Levelisation Reconciliation. It's a new REC schedule, and that sets out all the arrangements concerning Payment Method Levelisation Reconciliation. Schedule 1, so that's interpretations and definitions. So we've added some new defined terms in there around PML reconciliation. The Performance Assurance Report Catalogue. So there's a new report that has been added, and that will be an aggregated view on energy supply submission of their portfolio data. And we've also added a new risk to the retail risk register, and that will be added to measure and monitor parties' data submissions for PML reconciliation. If we can move on to the next slide. So who's impacted by this change? Energy suppliers will be impacted by this. Having this PML reconciliation in place will ensure that there is a mechanism for timely and accurate invoicing of energy suppliers to reconcile the cost of the levelisation policy. Code manager will be impacted. They'll have ongoing operational responsibilities impacting the performance assurance provider. And we've also got RECO as well as the code administrator, and they'll have ongoing operational responsibilities, and that's for the provision of technical solution, administration and the finance processes as well. The release plan is already available on the REC portal, and that was communicated out in the weekly bulletin. Legal text pre-release was released on the 8th of March. We're having this release webinar today, and this will be made available on the REC portal as well. So there'll be a recording and the slides as well. And then we'll do our normal activities as we do when there's a release. So we'll communicate to you to let you know it's gone live. And then there's also going to be a dedicated page within the portal where we'll put various documents on, and that will go live by Monday. So there's some of the slides that Chris will be talking you through today. We'll also make sure they're available on the portal as well. So there'll be lots of information there for you and lots of guides should you need them. Thanks, I'll hand over to Chris.
Good afternoon, thank you, Holly. Yes, so I'm Chris, and I'm here to provide just an update on the operational readiness and share some updates. So could we move to the next slide, please? So this, just first of all, I need to show this flow diagram again. So this was presented at the winter webinar several months ago, just a reminder of the overall process and the various elements involved. There have been no changes to the overall process, so I just wanted to show you this again. So if we move to the next slide, please. So I have created an overview of the important dates around invoicing, payment and credit here. So when these slides go out, you'll be able to see these. I've also added a reminder that late payments are taken seriously, and the process around this can be found in the new Schedule 31 for levelisation. Next slide, please. So for this, a calendar has been developed. This here shows just the first few months of the cycle, but a longer calendar will be available on that page Holly mentioned on the REC portal. Next slide, please. So moving on to the crux of my descriptions. So first, I'd like to thank the participants of the supplier UAT. They were very helpful in determining some areas we needed to focus on today. So the primary takeaway were in the formatting of the files themselves. The Ofgem defined regions must be in exacting format, as must the column headers. They're case sensitive and spelling sensitive. The files must contain your MPID or SSE as relevant in the title, and must be a CSV file. Also, should there be a region where you have no meters, the region still needs to be populated with a 0. Null or blank cells won't work, and will be picked up by validation as an invalid file. For smooth process, the page that Holly mentioned earlier, the REC portal page, will contain a series of templates for both a gas and electricity submission, which will contain the exact regions that you need to use and the exact column headers you need to use. I'd also like to remind you that fixed term contracts entered into prior to the Ofgem decision date of the 23rd of February should be excluded from your portfolios. Next slide, please. So this is just a visual representation of what a file might look like. So it would have your MPID or your SSE in the first column, the regions in the second column, and then along the top you can see the column headers and populated with metadata. We did just to reiterate, we did encounter a couple of issues during UAT, and I've just highlighted them here. Next slide, please. So the SharePoint itself is fairly simple to use. It is a Microsoft product, so if you don't have the ability to engage with Microsoft tools, please flag that to us now, and we'll work with you to get around that. The tool, we now have a list of the contacts appropriate for SharePoints. We'll be setting these up in the next 2 weeks. We did notice during UAT that sometimes the links get flagged by security or sent to the junk mail, so please check your junk mail. If it's getting a bit close to the date and you haven't received a link from us, please let us know. It may have been caught by one of those security systems. Otherwise, it's fairly simplistic. Upload the file onto the SharePoint. That is it from me from update. Are there any questions?
There's a couple of questions on Slido that I'd like to answer at this point, and I think they are questions for me rather than yourselves. So two questions about the date of the exclusion of fixed term contracts. So that should be your sales date. So at the point that you agreed the price with the consumer, which is not necessarily the supply start date. Now, if that causes an issue for suppliers and they want to use the supply start date, that is also permissible, because that is slightly to the supplier's detriment. But the idea here is that it is when you sold the contract, because you negotiated the price without knowing that this levelisation component would be in there. Now you do know that that levelisation component will be in there. It's captured by the scheme. So the simple answer is sales date.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think we also have a couple of questions. So the first question is, won't this drive many customers to have prepayment meters fitted to their premises, given that it costs less?
So I can answer these now as well. So the answer in some cases is maybe, but we don't. Prepayment has always been a payment method of choice. You know, people do opt to go onto it. Suppliers over a certain size are mandated to offer it as an option if suppliers choose, if consumers choose to do that. So that's one thing. Secondly, we don't think that these payment types are necessarily going to incentivize mass switching to prepayment, given the position that prepayment has in the market. And thirdly, I think there's potentially some complex debate to be had here about the merits of traditional prepayment versus smart prepayment, and the operational fact that mass uptake of traditional prepayment is just not going to be practicable for people. But yeah, in general, we don't envisage a significant additional uptake of prepayment from these kind of price signals.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think the second question was also kind of relating to that. So I think we'll hand over to V.
Thank you. Hi all, I'm V Sharma from the Record Managers Performance Assurance team. And I wanted to take you through how we'll be assuring the changes introduced by payment method levelization. So as part of the R0147 solution, through collaboration with Ofgem, the change has considered how performance assurance will be delivered for this process. The solution itself defines the role of RecPab and the Rec Code Manager in relation to performance assurance. As part of the solution, we've identified a new retail risk, which is primarily non-submission of payment portfolio data impacts the accuracy of the redistribution of costs across the retail market. The Code Manager will, with effect from the implementation of this change, be monitoring this new risk driver that's been added. And as as Holly previously mentioned, the risk register is being updated, and so are the performance assurance dashboards, and these will be a part of the release for this change at the end of the month. You go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the role of the PAB, PAB primarily has responsibilities in areas, as I previously mentioned about the retail risk that's added. So for non-submission of the payment portfolio data, PAB will apply performance assurance techniques that are available to the PAB to mitigate the retail risk we've identified. So where parties don't submit, they would expect to receive a notification in the first instance, and where there's repeated non-submission or late submission, the higher level paths would be applied with approval from RecPab. The next area of intervention is failure to pay. Again, as per the code drafting available in the new schedule 31, the PAB will, it requires RecPab to trigger an event of default where a supplier fails to make a payment on time, and they also fail to not remediate within the 20 working days after the due date as per the code drafting. RECO will be informing PAB of such instances, and the event of default will be triggered in line with the main body clause 16. The third area is where disputes have been brought with regards to the payment method levelization reconciliation amounts. Again, the schedule details the thresholds, etc., that apply for bringing such disputes. PAB's role is, in accordance to clause 22 of the main body, to ensure that the dispute is settled within a reasonable time period from its referral. If we move to the next slide, please. I also quickly wanted to just tell you a bit more about the performance assurance dashboard and how parties will be able to see the data. So the new risk driver will be added to the existing performance assurance risk driver screen. Within that screen, you'll be able to see that whether your submission's been received or not. So this will, the information in that dashboard will be based on the information provided by the service provider and their record of submission. Suppliers will have the opportunity to validate this and this data that's reported to PAB, and wherever a supplier notices there's inconsistency, i.e. either this should not apply to your organization or you've submitted and it's still marked as not submitted, we ask you to contact the code manager through the inquiries mailbox, and we'll take we'll follow the process to get that resolved as soon as possible. I think that's the end of my section. And yeah, Q&A. Any questions
right.
for me?
So we do have an active poll at the moment where you can ask any questions on the Go Live. However, we do have some questions in our Q&A portion as well. So the first question was, when will the data specification for the files be finalized and published?
Hello.
I believe that's sorry, Chris.
I was going to say, so the data files themselves, like I said, will be available on a template. There is the specifications are in schedule 31, and there are some there's an additional updated for the Ofgem regions, which is also available on the portal. Hopefully that answers the question. Holly, is there anything else I missed?
No, I don't think so. No, I think you've covered it. Thank you.
Okay.
One of the top questions in the Q&A at the moment is, what's your opinion that this won't cause mass migration to PAYG based on? Trad, yes, but why would customers scared to fix, want cheaper rates, not go for PG?
So I think you can look at the a number of factors, not least the reputation that prepayment has in the market for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's still fairly small payment differentials between prepayment and direct debit. And we've not seen any evidence that this is going to cause a mass switch. Now, we are now monitoring on a monthly basis what the balance of prepayment versus direct debit meter points are, this is also monitored on a quarterly basis and feeds through to the price cap. So these considerations can be taken into account, but I'm not saying there'll be no uptick, but we're not anticipating, as I say, mass a mass change in the market on what are, when you look at it, relatively modest incentives.
Thanks, Jonathan. And the next question is, does this impact suppliers that have domestic meter points on commercial terms under a multi-site contract?
No, because this is all related to tariffs. So if you're not on a tariff, if you're on a commercial contract, then it's out of scope for this.
Thank you. And the next question is this change just for traditional, I'm guessing, prepayment, or is it smart?
No, again, it feeds through from the price cap, which makes no differentiation between traditional prepayment and smart prepayment.
Thank you.
So it covers all prepayment, both smart and traditional.
Thank you. The next question is, mass uptake of prepayment isn't practicable for suppliers, but we're already seeing customers wanting it because it's now cheaper.
I think we've talked about this topic. I'm not sure that was a question, but yeah, I'm happy to take any discussions of this via email, and but yeah.
Sure. The next question is, can you share the link to the report template and the final data specification?
Yes, of course. As Holly mentioned, there is a specific page on the REC portal that we are finalising now, which will contain the templates, the specification, and also the calendar, which I mentioned. Once that is live, we will share the link. Holly, is there a specific method that this will be shared in?
We can share it in the change bulletin once it's live. If it's not live by the change bulletin, we can communicate that out separately, but yeah, we will do that.
Thank you. And the next question is, the off-gem view is that there won't be mass switching to PPM payment methods. Will there be continued monitoring to see whether this is actually the case?
Yes, as I say, we have both quarterly and monthly data coming in. It feeds into the price cap process. It feeds into the ongoing policy evaluation process.
Thank you. The next question is, can you recap on the fixed term contract position, i.e. what fixed term contracts should be excluded from the report?
So those fixed term contracts which were sold prior to 23rd February this year.
Thank you. And the next question is, suppliers are required to put, could you pay less messages on bills? This will clearly show pay-as-you-go or prepayment as cheaper. So why would this not attract customers to swap?
As I've said, I mean, I'm happy to take conversations about migration of prepayment offline over email, but I'm not sure we can get into the full detail and evidence base on this call.
The next question is, does this apply to legacy, as there is a pot of consumers desiring cheaper energy and non-smart technology, which has a limited live and limited stocks currently?
So the first question, does this apply to legacy prepayment? I think yes, it applies to everybody on prepayment tariffs. I'm not sure what the relevance of the second part is in relation to this.
And the next question is, when is the report template and data specification expected to go live on the REC portal? I think that was mentioned previously.
I think we've answered that, yeah.
Yeah, just in the next day or two, possibly Monday.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. There are quite a few questions at the moment, so I think it's best to just get them all out of the way. The next question is, there is a risk that we treat all prepayment customers the same. Many customers opt for pay-as-you-go solutions, especially if cost-effective, not just the can't pay.
Well, suppliers have had a license condition for years to if you supply more than 50,000 meter points to actively market and support prepayment, it's always been a payment solution of choice that people can opt to. It's never been something that is just for the can't pay. And this doesn't change that. So yeah.
Thank you. The next question is, traditional prepayment meter supply is dwindling. Can suppliers offer smart only option rather than traditional prepayment?
That's a question that is, you know, the issues are live in Ofgem, but I think that's a general smart metering policy question, which I don't think is in scope for this session. But again, if people want to drop Ofgem an email on this, we can make sure that gets to the right team is answered.
Thank you. In terms of cheapest tariff messaging, can you confirm that this will drive every customer receiving an alternate cheapest tariff or pay-as-you-go?
It very much depends on what your tariff offerings are, how this compares to your fixed offerings, how it compares to your other offerings, but it could result in some people having that message. Yes.
Thank you. And the question on the screen, have you considered derogated tariff suppliers customers and whether these will form part of the levelisation calculation?
So that's the same consideration as in relation to where the future fixes are included, and yes, they are in scope for this.
Thank you. And final question for now, when can suppliers expect to receive the SharePoint link for the file upload?
Yes, happy to answer that. So we are going to be rolling these out in the next 2 weeks over time. If you do not receive a link and it's getting close to the deadline, please reach out. It may have been caught in some sort of security or junk mail. So we encourage you to look in your junk mail folders. Yeah, so the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. I think we can move on for now. That was all the questions we had for the moment. And I'll hand over to Holly.
Thank you. Just to cover post-implementation support, if you just want to go on to the next slide, Jenny. So if you do need any support relating to this release, you can either raise a service desk inquiry or use the email there, or you can get in touch with your operational account manager. And then we will go away and speak to whoever it is, if it's relevant, to go back and get you those answers. So yeah, if you do have any queries post go live or in the meantime, please do get in touch. Back to you, Jonathan.
Okay, great. So can we move on to the next slide? So we wrote out to suppliers about this recently, more detail in our decision, but the background is that both the Office for National Statistics and Treasury have a method for counting public expenditure. And this can include expenditure which doesn't run through the traditional understanding of taxation and public expenditure, but is expenditure incurred under the policy direction of government. There's a technical reason for this. But they have determined that the reconciliation mechanism and the monies that flow through that count as tax and spend. They technically will form part of Ofgem's operating budget. And Jonathan Brearley, as the accounting officer for Ofgem, is now accountable to Parliament for this money. In addition, we also need to make sure that everybody involved in the system has confidence that the data going into the system is robust and people are getting out and putting in what they need to. So when R0147 created Schedule 31 was created, we had powers in there, an obligation in there of people to comply with the audit requirements directed by the authority. What we're giving you notice of now, and there will be further information in the future with the detail, is that we will require each supplier participating in the scheme to conduct an audit to agreed upon procedures, which we will define and we'll give you full information on, that just assures Ofgem that you have the right controls in place, that you've been submitting the correct data, you're making the correct payments. Now, much of this is similar to the scheme that's already in place for the solar levy piece. One question we frequently get asked on this is whether you can use internal auditors or external auditors, and the answer is you can use internal auditors provided they're suitably qualified people operating to the correct standards, and we will need the outcome of this audit submitted to us, notified by an appropriate person, by which we mean, you know, a statutory director or company officer. There is going to be a lot more discussion with you and about the content of this. We're going to produce detailed guidance, including timings of when we will require this. This is what we will need for the first year of the scheme. We are also thinking about what we may need at year end, and what we may need in future years, which could be lighter touch, risk based. I would ask you to have a look at the letter that went to all relevant rec parties and to Ofgem's reg director contacts at the beginning of this week, which has got some more information and details for how to contact us with further questions. Is there, and that's everything on audit and assurance. If there, should take questions on audit and assurance first, and then I'll move on to the multi-rate issue.
I don't think we have any questions.
Okay.
Oh, we do. Sorry.
All right.
Why have you chosen ISRS 4400 AUPs as the assurance standard?
I would have to refer that to our finance colleagues. I'm not an audit expert and couldn't answer that.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's all we have for now.
Okay. So the next piece, and again, so this is an issue that we have identified with a mismatch with the RECO reconciliation design and the Ofgem price cap levelisation design. So the method by which the levelisation rate, so that's the Ofgem price cap rate, is built up. It is built up in each region for each fuel, with each payment type and each profile class of electricity. So profile class 1, profile class 2. Now, due to the different balance of multi-rate meters on different payment types in different regions, so this can lead to some quite big differences, well, relatively big differences between levelisation allowances for single rate and multi-rate in certain regions. Because the RECO reconciliation system can only consume one rate for electricity per region, we have to do two things. One, we need to decide now which rate we are going to apply, and two, we are going to have to go back and look to fix this. And so first off, the assurance is that we are fixing this. There will be a further change proposals to the rec, and part of that we will go back and true up suppliers to make sure that everybody pays reconciliation amounts proportional to their the levelisation amounts. In terms of the impact of this, for most suppliers, the impact per customer is, if it ran for a full year like this, about a penny either way. Some benefits, some lose out. Some smaller suppliers, the impact is between a benefit of about 9p per year per customer and a cost of about 12p per year per customer on average. As we say, this is a temporary issue. We're going to go back, true people up to fix this. We are also happy to have bilateral conversations with suppliers where we can talk through on an individual basis what our expectation of the temporary impact on you in terms of revenue may be. Obviously, we can't share that information in a public forum because it does rely on your sensitive commercial data. Again, we wrote out to you this week with some further information and contact details, and I'd encourage you to contact us via those routes.
Hi, so that's over to me. So I'm Harriet Truss, I work in the change team, and just my kind of moment in this is just to kind of confirm and reiterate what Jonathan's just said, really, in terms of a new change proposal that will be coming into the code manager, and that kind of we're expecting that to come through, and we're working with Ofgem and Reco to make sure that we've got the right requirements and information into that going forward. We expect the CP to be raised kind of in the summer around June, July, and that'll be off the back of already kind of working through the specifics of that. So when it comes at that time, it'll be a pretty much a fully worked through solution, so that can pretty much come straight out for impact assessment to parties. Essentially, in the letter earlier this week from Ofgem, and as Jonathan's just talked through, that CP will be based on that split of the data, and it's just about making sure we've got that appropriately captured in the schedule, and specifically the appendix in there. And with that, we'll also obviously there'll be the communications piece exactly on how that true up and the timings of that, but we're working through the change proposal to make sure it lands in the right timing for that true up to happen within the financial year. In terms of the solution itself, in the run up to June, likelihood is that we'll come out to industry just to sense check and run those requirements, that data spec by you, to make sure that we've got that all captured as you would expect as well. So yeah, thank you. And I think that's us.
Thank you, Harriet. I think we're going to move on to the questions portion. So we do have quite a few questions. First of all, the question is for me: why is the poll asking an open question? This was just to break up the Q&A portion a bit more. However, I have opened the live Q&A, and I'll bring that up in the next slide. For now, the top question is this tariff specific or multi-rate meter?
Sorry, I apologise. I lost audio, then had connection issues. So can you just repeat the question?
Sorry, yeah, it's just the top question. Is this tariff specific or multi-rate meter?
So it's actually it's be about multi-rate tariffs, because again, everything's driven by the price cap, by the billing.
The next top question is, when will you share the blended rate that you'll use in the calculations?
So I believe that was in the letter which went out. If it wasn't, then I can follow up with that and we can get that out. But I am 90% certain. Sorry, James or Zubair, I know you're listening on the call. Can you just ping me to confirm that it was in the annex to the letter that went out on Monday or not? And I'll circle back to that answer once they've sent me that information.
Next question is, should suppliers expect external audits as well as their own internal assurance?
So obviously Ofgem retains our compliance enforcement investigation functions if needs to be, but no, the design for this is that you need to provide us with an appropriate audit letter, audit opinion. And this also links to another question that I saw saying, you know, what happens if we don't have any audit function? Suppliers could choose to use external auditors to do this function, or they could use their internal option. So you've got the option of using appropriate internal auditors if you've got them, or you can procure external assurance if that is necessary or meets your risk appetite. And to be absolutely clear, this is a function that suppliers have to undertake as part of their obligation under their license and the code. So the cost of that will fall on suppliers.
Thank you. And I think the last question in this portion is, when are you expecting to make the more detailed guidance available?
So that will be in the next couple of months, but we will be writing out to people shortly. And just to say, to answer the first question, so the blended rate and the methodology that we used to get to the blended rate, which mirrored methodology in Schedule 31, was in Annex C of the letter. So if you so Retco circulated that letter, it was also published on our website. Sorry, the methodology was Annex B. I'm being corrected, but the rates were in Annex C. But it's all there in the letter that was published on Monday.
Thank you. This is now the Q&A portion. So we'll start at the top. For the audit for suppliers without a formal internal audit function, what is the expectation in terms of who engages the auditor and pays their fee?
So I think I covered that. So this is something that suppliers are required to do, and it is something that suppliers will have to pay for.
Thank you. The scheme generally will require a lot of time setting up and cost in relation to administering the scheme. Is this factored into the price cap calculation?
So suppliers' operational costs in general are a component of the price cap. There is an ongoing OPEX review within the price cap. So it would have an impact, but in the scheme of things, in terms of the the proportion of supplier operational costs that this would actually be, I think the impact would be the impact on the price cap calculation will be minimal.
Thank you. And the next question is, when can we expect for Ofgem to provide more information about the audit requirements?
Again,
which I think was answered. Yeah. Oh, I missed a question there. When will the solution be delivered? Will it be 6 months like the initial build?
So we are still discussing between Ofgem and Retco the exact delivery date. You know, we've got an absolute desire to get this done in the first financial year of the scheme, so by April 25, and the sooner the better. but we'll be able to share more information on build timescales and the like in the future.
Thank you. And I think the question that I missed was, is it proportionate for a small growing supplier with only a few thousand consumers?
So is what the audit requirement?
I assume so.
I think the answer to that is that although it's not directly linear, the the more customers you have, the more complex your business is, the more tariff types you have, the more complex and therefore more expensive an audit will be. So there's an element that's it's inherent in the scaling of that cost with the scaling of the audit. But we do need these audit functions. We need them because this is public money that is being spent, and we need them so that each individual party has confidence in the scheme.
Thank you. The next question is, will the audit agreed upon procedures be centrally agreed to ensure consistency across differing audit functions?
Yes, the point about the agreed upon procedures, which is a term of art in audit, is that they are consistent across all parties. And yes, I can I'll provide some information to Retco to share with your contract manager contacts on the background and justification for the specific standards that we're looking at the moment.
Yeah. So when will we know the agreed upon procedures so we can ensure we will have required data available? This may require it work.
So I think the message at the moment is to make sure that you've got the data that you are submitting on a monthly and quarterly basis for this. So that's the tariff RFI and the tariff RFI and the monthly portfolio extract that goes to Retco. Make sure that you've got the data and the process that shows that how you've built up that and how you assure yourselves that the numbers in that are correct. But we will set out further guidance shortly. So audit outcomes will be sent to Ofgem. But again, we will provide information on how this is, the practicalities of who says what, where, and when in the next couple of months.
And can we have follow-up action that you'll inform us what the reasoning is for the internal?
Yeah, as I say, I will. I'll get some information out to Retco to share with this contact list.
Yeah.
But again, if anybody has any detailed questions around this, take a look at the letter that came out on Monday. There's contact details in there, and we're happy to have detailed conversations on that.
Just before we close this off, are there any final questions that anyone has? I think I'll take silence as golden. This question was answered, wasn't it, Jonathan?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for attending. We hope that you found this useful. Just before you go, we do ask that you fill a little feedback quiz just to let us know what we've done well, what you found useful, and what we can improve. It helps us out put on things like this in the future. So thank you, everyone.